Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. On behalf of Books and Books, welcome. Tonight we have a very exciting event. We have two authors, Amie Kaufman from Melbourne, Australia, and Meagan Spooner from, is it Asheville, North Carolina. And they've co-written a series, is it The Broken Star? No. Starbound, yes. Then the first one is These Broken Stars right here, the blue, and their sequel, This Shattered World, is what they're touring for now. I don't think they need too big of an introduction because you all know them and you're here. So please give a warm Books and Books welcome to Meagan Spooner and Amie Kaufman. I will move over. So we're going to do this as a sort of panel thing. I will ask just some opening questions and then we'll open it up to the audience if that's okay. And you guys can think about some questions in the, I guess, conversational period. Conversational is a word, I think. So one, opening question: how does it work co-writing a trilogy rather than just a standalone book?
Good question. So, our basic co-writing model is that we each take a character, and in our first pass through the draft, I write the guys, Meg will write the girls, and then once we get to know each other's characters better, and as we're revising, we'll start sort of getting into each other's chapters and editing and changing things up. So often by the end, we genuinely have no idea who wrote which line at all.
Yeah, by the time we're doing the final passes through the manuscript, we tend to leave little notes for each other when we're working, little encouraging, this is so wonderful. And sometimes we'll leave these messages for each other. I'll leave a note for Amie saying, I still love this line so much. You're so clever. This is wonderful. And she'll write back and she'll be like, I don't think I wrote this.
I think that's your line.
So there are lines. Great. Yeah, there are lines in there that, honestly, elves wrote them or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and the elves is the other good thing about co-authoring on two different continents for sure, which is because of time zones. As I head to bed in the morning, as I head to bed in the evening, depends how much writing I've been doing, but as I head to bed, I'll hand off to Meg, so we'll get online together and I'll tell her, this is what I did today. This is what would be great if you could do one thing and check one thing in my chapter, it would be this. She'll kind of take her briefing and then go off and do her stuff as well. And then as she heads to bed, she hands it back to me.
So we always like to say that it's like elves worked on our book in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
You pretty awesome.
Wake up and there's this whole new chapter that was never there before.
Yeah.
So as some of you may or may not know, the trilogy is, they are a series of companion novels.
Yes.
So why the decision to write companion novels instead of continuing with the same characters throughout? I know we see them and they do come up, but why that decision and how did you come about that decision?
Well, we really think that, a novel should be about the most important thing to happen to the character in that character's entire life. And we really felt that all of the things that Tarver and Lilac go through in the first book, it's just so much that is the most important thing that happens to them. And we didn't want to have them star in the next book because we would have to sort of rip them apart a little bit in order to reintroduce romantic and dramatic tension. And we just felt like they'd been through enough. We didn't want to.
And when you're watching a TV series and the couple finally gets together and then
someone gets amnesia
or rips them apart or whatever, and you feel like you went on this epic journey with them, and then it kind of gets cheapened when
Once upon a time.
Yes.
Not naming names. But it gets cheapened when they're apart. They get ripped apart, and you're like, well, all of that thing we did was for nothing. So. Yeah, definitely one of the most frequently asked questions is, have we seen the last of Lilac and Tarver? And we try very hard not to spoil when discussing the books, especially with the second one newly out.
Yeah.
But we will say that in each book, those main characters who make it to the end of the book will continue to make cameos.
Yeah.
That's what I knew from what I was told.
Yeah.
So, what inspired book one? What was the big aha moment?
Well, I think what's kind of fun about it is that there was no aha moment. There was just this long, slow. We started writing it for fun, and we were writing for fun for a year. Not even writing it in book format. Just came up with these characters, having fun, writing these scenes, really just entertaining each other. And then Meg's first series, the Skylark series, was published, and we began to think maybe someone else would want to read some of the other stuff that we've done. So we have hundreds of thousands of words of Lilac and Tava, like walking and talking and arguing and making camp and doing nothing.
I mean, we're massive nerds. Like, we are huge geeks, and we love space.
Really.
No, you don't even
welcome
know.
here.
I don't know, we feel like we're in a judgment-free zone.
Yeah, we're with our people right now. So we love space. We're huge into space. We've always loved science fiction. But we've also always loved shipwreck stories. And so originally, when we first started sort of playing around with these characters, our plan was we were going to crash this massive spaceship into this planet, and then we were just going to like have fun playing the survival stories of various pockets of survivors. And when we would get bored of one, we would create new ones to have fun with. And a year later, we were still playing with Lilac and Tarver. And we were like, you know, if this is still entertaining to us after a year of sort of playing around with them, you know, maybe there's something in that. And so we mentioned it to our agents, and they were like,
send it. So we kind of scrubbed it up a little bit and sent it along. And it came to being very slowly. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into.
And it was never intended to be a novel at first.
No. Simple decisions like, let's crash a spaceship. And then a year later, you're like in discussions with a NASA orbital physicist going, they don't crash that way. That's not correct. Oh God, what have we done?
Yeah.
So there was a lot more science than I think we realized we were letting ourselves in for.
So I have two questions, one for each of you more specific. First one for Meagan. Did the Skylark series have any influence over Starbound?
Yeah, well, you know, they're both survival stories. I have this thing where I love, this is going to sound terrible, I love tearing characters away from their homes, away from their comfort zones. And that's what happens to Lilac and Tarver, and that's what happens to Lark and Skylark. And that was so much fun, and I hadn't gotten it out of my system. And I think that really contributed to writing these Broken Stars. Plus, the character of Lark is very different from Lilac, and I wanted, Lark is, she's naive, but she starts out very tough and very resilient. Lilac does not. She's a socialite. She's never been in a real forest. She's only been in, you know, simulated parks. At one point, she's outraged that the ground has rocks, you know, because she's never...
She's only been to fake parks where it's all nice grass that's soft.
And that's where you, like, have picnics and everything. So for Lilac, there's much more of an arc. Where she finds, I mean, she doesn't change so much as grow into the person that was under all of this dresses and bright lights all along.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite pieces of feedback we get about Lilac in a lot of fan mail is people basically writing in saying, at the start, I judged Lilac because she was spoiled and rich and I didn't like her one bit. And then at the end, I judged myself for having judged her. Which is, you know, I'm seeing a few people being like, yes.
Well, I mean, I think...
You're supposed to. That was the intention.
I think it's pretty well accepted that female characters tend to be judged more harshly than male characters. And in fact, women in the real world tend to be judged more harshly than men.
By other women.
By other women.
By men.
Sometimes especially by other women. And so Lilac was sort of our exploration into that. We created a character who, in herself, was not a bad she's not a bad person at the start. But she has those qualities that women tend to judge other women for. She's very strongly opinionated. She's pretty. She's rich. Nobody likes the pretty rich
Daughter
girl.
of the richest man in the universe.
Exactly.
Yeah, she's spoiled and she's super girly.
Yeah, but she's you know, she's not a bad person. She just has these qualities that we tend to judge women for. And you know, we'll see comments where people are like, "Oh my God, Lilac should just shut up and do what Tarver's telling her to do," and you're like. And it'll be girls posting this stuff, and you're like, oh my God, no. But then by the end, they're like, yeah, Lilac.
Yeah, it's true. And I think one of the things I like about her, though, is she does that arc. And sorry, the reason I talk about it like this is because Meg wrote her. So it's like almost like looking at someone else's creation. But I like the fact that although she changes and strengthens, she doesn't actually just transform completely. Like, one of her happiest moments in the book is getting a shower. Like, she's still a girl, you know? She's still a very girly girl, even at the end of it.
She finds a change of clothing, and it's like the best day of her life, basically.
Yeah.
Because she's this dress that is on the cover, that's not just one of those YA covers where they put the girl in the dress for it to be pretty. She's actually shipwrecked in that green ball gown, and she's like hiking through the woods in a ball gown for, I don't know, 75% of the book.
Yeah.
And it's terrible.
Yes.
So,
So question for Amie.
Yes.
You are also co-writing another book with Jay Kristoff,
Yes.
who wrote the first one was Storm Dancer. Excellent sci-fi, by the way. Super gritty, super dark, super
Yes.
bloody. Awesome.
Very
And
good.
so how is it writing Illuminae?
It's the same, but it's different. Illuminae is coming out in August, and for those who haven't heard about it yet, the pitch that we gave when we gave it to our agents was it's like Battlestar Galactica meets 10 Things I Hate About You. So it's like a snarky teenage love story in space. And it's got all our favourite sci-fi stuff in it, like mad artificial intelligences and plagues and spaceships and explosions. And I mean, that's one thing you can kind of, I think, count on when I'm writing a book, is that a lot of things will explode and a lot of people will die. Which is funny, because people who meet me who don't know what I do for a living will often be like, "You're so lovely, you're just one of the nicest people I've met." I'm like, I get it all out elsewhere. In my head right now, terrible things happening. But look, I think possibly the fact that I've co-authored 2 series gives the impression that it's something that you could kind of just do with anyone. But the truth is, I've just been phenomenally lucky to find 2 authors who I could work with. Because I mean, the first thing is you have to think their work's exceptional. Like, you have to just think, you have to go to work every day thinking that you're going to have to find a way to lift in order to live up to the people that you've chosen to write with. And, so first of all, to find 2 people whose styles I, absolutely love, whose writing I adore, and who I can mesh with creatively is, like, I've used up all my luck. In terms of process, it's quite similar. We will kind of sit down, brainstorm together sort of the next section of the book. And if it's Meg and I, then we'll divide up the chapters by whether it's the guys chapter or the girls chapter. With Jay, we have to do it differently, because the premise behind Illuminae is that it's like a found footage book. So it's a pile of documents that a hacker has put together. So every page is like an email or an instant message or a security report or a blueprint. So we come up with the plot and then make a list of what documents do we think will best, lay out those things. And then we either write them all up or we write art directions. Like, I've got a spaceship guy now who I describe the spaceship and it goes off to him, and then all these blueprints of actual spaceships come back.
Well, not actual spaceships, but spaceships
Actual
that he has
blueprints
designed.
of spaceships.
Yeah, there you go.
Move the actual. And I, look over them and like, yeah, make that bit a bit more pointy, add more guns, and send it back. And,
She's like, I'll take that one.
It's nuts, yeah.
So, is there, do you have a favorite scene from These Broken Stars and a favorite scene from This Shattered World?
Ooh.
My favorite scene from These Broken Stars.
Without spoilers.
That's all right. I don't think it's a spoiler that the Icarus crashes, because I think, that's the premise
I
of the
mean
book.
spoilers for
For
book
this
2,
one we can
for
do,
those
don't
who haven't
worry.
read it.
Is when Lilac has to explore the wreck of the Icarus, which still kind of freaks me out every time I read it. Meg wrote it, and Meg's way more hardcore than I am. She writes... I mean, I'm not saying she'd thrive in the wild, but, like, when it comes to...
Definitely not.
This is why it's so fascinating that she writes survival stuff, because, like, Meg will be the first one down when the
Oh my
apocalypse
God.
comes.
We were walking around on the Miracle Mile, just sort of
Yeah.
looking at the shops, and I was like, it's so hot, I'm gonna die.
It's like 75 degrees or something. So, but there's this scene where Lilac explores the Icarus, and it's terrifying, and it's an absolutely pivotal moment for her, because she's been in the past all of these things we talk about, and this is the moment when she has to step up and try to save Tava's life, which hasn't been happening before. Favorite
I think
scene?
my favorite, it's not really one scene from the book, but one of my favorite things about the book is the little interstitial parts that come in between each chapter. There's little sections of an interview where somebody is interrogating Tarver about what happened on the planet. And at first, he just seems to be recapping what's happening in the chapters. But as time goes on, his story to this interrogator starts to diverge from the truth from what we're actually reading in the book. And it makes you wonder why, because by that time you know Tarver well enough to know that he is not a liar, he's not given to lying, and so you're wondering what he's lying about, and you're wondering why he's being so defensive, and you're wondering why Lilac isn't in the interview. And to me that just adds like a layer of mystery to the story that I really like. And she wrote most of them, so I can say that.
My inner sass coming out.
Yeah.
My favorite scene in This Shattered World is the very final scene and the very final line, which I will not share.
I haven't read it
but
yet. Like, just kidding, I haven't touched
Yeah,
it.
so the ending is we had that line for a very long time. The ending of These Broken Stars came hard. It originally ended in a different spot, and we went back for like 5 different
And our editor just kept being like, nope, try again.
Keep going. And the thing is, she was right. And
Absolutely.
even as we were doing it, we knew she was right. We were just like, you sure
And
it's
when we
not?"
wrote this ending, we knew it was the right one. Like, we wrote it and we were like, finally, we did this, and
Done.
sent it off to her.
Yeah. And whereas with this one, we had that final line for a long time, and there was something very pleasurable about writing towards it and knowing the perfect note that that was going to end on. So
I'm going to be contrary and say that one of my favorite parts is the beginning, the first scene. It's no coincidence that These Broken Stars starts in a bar and This Shattered World starts in a bar. But they are two very different places. On the Icarus, it's this first-class salon, and everyone's fancy, and there's like hovering trays delivering drinks, and people in ball gowns. In This Shattered World, it's this dingy little bar with like an old-fashioned jukebox on a swamp planet, where like you go if you've done something wrong,
Yeah.
And it's your first introduction to both Flynn and Jubilee, and I think if you only read one chapter, if you read that chapter, you know who they are, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I enjoy that for our first chapter still.
Also, Meg wrote that scene when she was out to dinner with friends who are not writers, and she was like, it came to her fully formed, and she was like, do excuse me, and just like grabbed some napkins and a pen, like shuffled off to the side.
I have those napkins still in my office. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have that first line. There's a guy staring at me from across the bar. Or at the other end of the bar, I think.
Yeah.
It was on a napkin somewhere.
What we'll do with that, we don't know.
No. Frame it.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite book set in space?
Ooh.
Oh, God, there's so many.
I mean, obviously, yeah, exactly. If I was going to go old school, I would go the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov.
Oh, yeah.
Which I just remember reading as a kid, and it was my parents didn't read science fiction, so I have no idea how I even found it, except I think something about stars on the cover kind of called to me as a little kid, so I have this big collection of secondhand, really old school, hard science fiction. And that was one of the very first ones I read. I remember just reading it and thinking, this is different, like this is different to all the other stuff I read, and trying to work out how. And really recent stuff, I would go one of the Across the Universe trilogy. I'm just trying to pick which one. Probably Shades of Earth.
Beautiful. I always really liked the book Ender's Game. I sort of wandered off with the rest of the series. I read Ender's Shadow, and then after that I felt like I was done reading that series. But Ender's Game in particular really affected me. But as a young kid, it actually wasn't a book. It was Star Trek Next Generation that just sold me. Because, I mean, some of the episodes in Star Trek Next Gen are just like, oh no, the, whatevers are coming and we've got to shoot them. But some of them are about philosophy and morality and, right and wrong and all the gray areas in between and who we are as a race and who we could be one day. And I don't know, even at a young age, I just was totally hooked on that world. And of course now I've seen like every single Star Trek ever because I'm a huge fan, but it was Next Generation that did it for me.
Do you think you guys are ready to take some questions from the audience?
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you guys have some questions? Excellent.
I'm always very impressed by co-writing because I just always see it as, two or more brains going at the same story. And I always wonder, everybody talks about the process of writing it, but what happens when you get to that impasse where you write something where you want the story to go one way, but you don't kind of like it where it's going? I mean, do you ever get to that point where
we
really
fight?
We
physically fight.
We like throw down. No. Actually,
it's it off and start over?
It's interesting. It doesn't happen very often that we disagree. No. But when we do, it's actually, if, she wants to go this way and I want to go this way, we usually talk about it and figure out why she wants this direction and why I want this direction. And it turns out there's a secret third direction that's different from both of those that was better than either of those two options. And it was actually, secret option C all along was the best We've never had to be like, this is my character, I'm doing, this no matter what you want. We've never had to do that.
No, I mean, we were flatmates for 2 years, and I sort of feel like if you
roommates,
yeah. I feel like if you could kind of negotiate the washing up, you could probably handle most things. Also, I write full time now, but my old job was as a mediator, so we've got like we had to talk about how we were going to resolve.
Because my old job was in retail, so I mean.
Yeah. But we
talk about combative.
No, but like there's like this wise old mediator story that's like two kids are arguing over an orange, so mum cuts it in half and gives half to each kid. But if she'd only asked, she would have found out that one wanted juice and one wanted zest to make a cake, and everyone could have got everything they wanted if they just talked about why they were trying to do the thing they wanted. And that's what we're doing with the stories, is we're talking about, well, I want to do this because I think it'll really develop character in this way, and well, I want to do this because I think we need some action. Okay, so what can we do
that shows the character in action while developing that person as a character? I mean, there's an infinite number of possibilities of what you can do with a story, and usually if one of us has our heart set on something, it's because it's really cool and the other one likes it. Yeah. And normally it's the stuff we don't actually care that much about that we disagree on, and that's because we haven't found the really good choice yet.
Yeah, if it was that good, we'd be attached to it. We'd be arguing.
Yeah.
But I think as well, like we have very similar instincts in terms of story, so it's never happened that one of us has been, well, I just
explode all the things.
Yeah, the other one's been like, why? Like, we tend to be on the same page.
Yeah.
That was a very Miami thing you did there, by the way.
What?
This is my character. No one touch it.
Really? That's a Miami thing?
My sister does it. I don't know.
Oh, that's so funny.
So, questions? Anyone? Yep, in the back.
Did you ever think it would be this much of a success?
No.
No. So we got the call on Wednesday night to tell us that These Broken Stars had made the New York Times bestseller list. And Meg cried, and I just
burst into tears and fell on the floor and was like,
we were in a conference call with both our agents and our editor, and I just kept going, what?
Yeah, she said what 8 times.
What? And then I had to go, Meg's crying, she'll be back in a minute. What? No.
Well, and that was out of the blue. I mean, it wasn't even the new book. It was a book that had been out for a year, and we were like, what?
Yeah.
It was very unexpected.
Definitive proof that readers are awesome.
Yeah.
But
because that only happens when it's you guys telling your friends about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you.
Word of mouth is how that happens, and we're so grateful. But
I mean, when we started, I think we already said, it was never intended to be a novel even at all when we started. So it wasn't even intended to be published.
Yeah, I was going to say, we were surprised when it was a book. We were surprised when it sold. We were surprised when it was published.
We were surprised when it got any kind of marketing push at all. We were surprised
by our first fan letter. Yeah, still surprised. Surprised to be here. Very surprised to be here.
Yeah.
It's a long way from Australia.
Well, you were here once before on vacation.
Yeah. Last time I was holidaying though.
Vacationing.
They know what holidaying means.
We get BBC down here. We got the lingo.
Yeah. So when we were touring in February for book 1, I actually came to Miami for a holiday with my best friend and our husbands and her new baby. And I was just tweeting with Chris, being like, hey, can I drop in? Everyone tells me your bookstore is gorgeous. And next thing I was here meeting Chris and signing books and promising to come back.
And texting me and being like, we have to come back to the store because this guy's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm awesome.
And lo, here we are. Live.
Seriously, she sent me an email.
My face is hot now. Stop.
Well, we campaigned really hard to come here.
Yeah.
Really?
Our publisher sent us the initial list of stores, and it was great. But we were like, we have to go to Miami, and we will do whatever you want. Like, they usually put you up in 2 hotel rooms, but we lived together, so we were like, we will share a hotel room. We will do whatever it takes. And so they added the Miami.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely nothing to do with the fact that it's going to be below freezing in New York tomorrow.
No, not at all.
I don't know how to. That's literally the coldest.
I'm actually kind of worried that she's just going to die.
Tomorrow's forecast is literally the coldest weather I have ever been in my life.
She's going to freeze, and I'm going to have to paint her to look realistic and prop her up next to me.
We've made a plan. It's going to go well. You guys are laughing now.
You in the corner?
Was it a difficult transitioning from Lilac and Tarver to Flynn and Jubilee?
The transition between Lilac and Tarver and Flynn and Jubilee, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think ordinarily it would be.
Yeah. because we're giant nerds and we spent a long time writing fan fiction before we wrote, so we sort of had this experience of like creating new characters or picking up new characters. So I think we probably have like that muscle built up a bit more than other writers who haven't done that might. But still, it definitely took, I think, like the first third of the new book as you write it, and the same with book 3,
Which we're working on now.
which we're working on now. It's probably a little harder to do. Like we wrote a short story for to go between these two books called This Night So Dark. And it was like putting on comfy old pants writing Tava again. Like that was when I went, oh, I guess it did take a bit of effort to transition. But
Well, and we started playing, because we told you guys about how we like play around with the characters and kind of like role play them in situations and like have like fake conversations between them and all of that before we start writing the book. We had been doing that while we were doing the revisions and stuff on this. So by the time we were completely done with this novel, we were way ready to be writing that one. But it was still, the characters are very different. So it was still, an adjustment period. But now in book 3, we're all of the surviving characters of the first 2 books show up in book 3, and so now we're writing all of the characters together, and it's like having a party with all your old friends.
Yeah.
It's really, really fun.
And it's really fun getting to see what they think of each other
Yeah,
as well.
because not all of them like each other.
Yeah. And, well, remember,
Like, you aren't the only one to judge Lilac.
Yeah, there's some judging that happens.
Yeah.
Just fun. I think with the book 3 characters, we've had a long time to think about them, so we found them perhaps a little easier to transition
That's actually
into.
true.
I've been waiting to write my dude for like 3 years now.
He's
like the
awesome.
most
He's so
glorious
good.
jerk who ever lived, and I love him. So seriously, when I write him, I kind of like in my seat like a dude, like ready to go. It's great.
It's so funny. He's a jerk, but like he's still chivalrous, and he's got a good heart. And Amie likes to say that he's the kind of, he will come to your rescue and he will come save you from whatever's going on. And then, as you're like climbing the ladder to escape, he'll have you go first so he can stare at your ass on the way out. That's what he's like.
Yeah. But he did come to rescue you in a very dangerous situation.
Yeah.
So, credit where credit's due.
So he's really fun.
Yeah. I grew up on sporting teams where it was mostly boys and me, so if I'd only
That's why she's so good at writing the teenage
all that
guys.
suffering was research and I didn't know it. Yeah. Pretty comfortable they're not watching the live stream. I feel I can say that.
You're going to get like 10 irate emails from your whole sailing team.
Yeah.
Mother's watching, careful.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Yep.
Since we've already said the co-writing is a great feat in itself, and not to take away from your relationship, but who would be your dream co-writer on a novel?
Oh, wow. Never been asked that.
I would say either Garth Nix or Robin McKinley.
Yeah, she'd be too scared to talk to them at any point.
Yeah, no, we'd have to like communicate through like gibbering and sign language.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, they would suit you really well. I would say one would be Marie Lou.
Yeah, add her to my list too.
The other would actually be an author whose book I am reading at the moment, and I'd love to be able to tell you when it's coming out. It's called The Wrath of the Dawn. It's by Renee Adier, or Adier, I think she says it, and it's coming out from Putnam in, I want to say like April maybe, but like seriously guys, write down The Wrath of the Dawn now, because I'm reading it and I'm having one of those throw my laptop off a bridge experiences while I do it. So I would write just with her to find out how she's doing it. It's so good.
More questions?
More questions?
Because I have plenty. Yep.
Going off that, do you guys, I know how you said in the second one you were working towards something. Going off that, do you guys outline or is it just like go with it?
Yeah, a little bit of both. They sometimes say about writers that they're either plotters or pantsers. So plotters plot in advance, pantsers write by the seat of their pants. Plotter, pantser, which makes life interesting. So our compromise is what a writer called Erin Bowman labelled headlights outlining.
Which is like the perfect metaphor
Yeah,
for
it's
that.
like you're driving along the road, which is going to be the story in the dark, and you can only see so far ahead. And so you outline in detail as far as the light is shining, and then you write that bit, and then you outline a little bit further, and you write that little bit.
And to sort of extend that metaphor, you do know where you're going, hopefully, at the end. But your destination might change. You might decide, you know, I don't want to go to New York, I want to go to Miami. And
Represent.
yeah. And so you can change your mind about where you're going, you know, even though you can't literally see your destination in front of you.
Yeah.
And I actually think that works to our advantage, that we come at it from opposite sides, because it forces us both to do things that we don't naturally do. And I think that adds something to the plot. You know, I'm not used to having to plot in advance, but it makes me think about the story in a certain way that I wouldn't necessarily do on my own. Whereas Amie wouldn't normally stray much from her outline, which doesn't leave as much room to sort of explore, what if we did this? Which is basically all I ever say in our brainstorming situations. I'll do, Amie calls it my think face. Apparently I make a face when I have an idea, and I'll like,
and I have to be very quiet.
Sit like
the second
that.
that face happens, because there's a thought happening, and if I interrupt it,
and something crazy is going to come out. And, you know, 90% of the time it's like ridiculous.
yeah, but like 10% gold.
Is it like the That's So Raven moment?
Yeah.
Face?
Yeah.
That's accurate.
Thanks. Any more questions? Yep.
What advice do you have for any aspiring writers?
Read a lot of stuff. I mean, read everything, whether it's the genre you want to write or not. I think any writer will tell you.
Yeah, but like particularly the stuff that's not, because for
Yeah.
instance, like it's the reading of the classics. It was reading Robinson Crusoe that kind of fed into this. It was, you know, reading
And Pride and Prejudice. I mean, there is a lot of Pride and Prejudice in this book. And like, if we were only reading YA science fiction, I mean, you wouldn't get there.
Yeah, like when I'm on planes, I often read action thrillers, even though they're not really my thing, because I know that I won't be able to stop turning pages, and that's what I want to happen on a plane, because it'll keep me moving.
And then you use what you learn from reading the action thrillers in your whatever else you're writing. Even if it's, you know, a contemporary romance and there's no car chases and there's no explosions, which I don't know why you would ever do that. But if, you know, you were weird. No, I actually really like contemporary. But, you know, you use that stuff, the pacing and the tension and things like that. But I would also say get used to showing your work to other people as soon as humanly possible. For younger writers, like even if you're, you know, 10 years old, you know, get used to showing it to people, and get used to, if you possibly can, Meg yourself, get used to showing it to people outside your family and outside your immediate friends. Because it's hard.
Anyway.
I saw that little grimace. It's hard. It's hard. But the thing is, the earlier you start, the longer you have and the more practice you have at it before you get to the point where you feel like you're ready to start showing it to professionals, which they will not spare your feelings in any way. So trust me, we still get like horrible like things sometimes.
Yeah, I think most authors would tell you the editorial letter experience is like you get it and you stare at it and then you cry. And then
it's worse than any rejection.
You know nothing, Jon Snow! And then you storm off, and then you like eat all your feelings, and then a week later you're like, oh, I guess she's right.
That's the worst is when you realize they're right and you've been throwing a tantrum for like a week and a half.
Over nothing.
Oh, it's bad.
Which is why most authors will just email their editor back and be like,
you.
thank you so much.
Goodbye.
I really look forward to digging into this through gritted teeth. And then, so because you know that in like, you know, future Amie in a week is going to be like, don't have said something stupid because she's going to be right. And then you're going to look, you know, so.
Yeah.
I would say,
I was just going to say, that's one of the other things that's great about having a co-author is that when you get an editorial note you don't like, you can have your co-author and you can be like, this is awful. And they're like, yeah, I know. And then, you know.
And that's enough. It does the trick.
Yeah.
I would say, I think what my advice for aspiring writers would be, would probably be finish something. Because I think a lot of writers, and you know, like I say writers because you're a writer if you write. You know, there's no like, what do I have to do to be a writer? But a lot of writers will write and rewrite that first chapter or maybe that first quarter over and over and over again. And what they end up with is like the world's best first chapter, and that's
Nothing
not very
else.
much use on its own. I would also say that you rarely ever use the beginning that you write. Like sometimes you do, but most authors, me included, write their way into a story, and by the time you've done the whole thing, it turns out that the real start is like in chapter 3 somewhere. So if you spent all that time polishing up front, you wasted your time, and you'll be really reluctant to cut it because it's so pretty, because you made it that way.
It's your darling, it's your baby.
All that work. But as well, I think the difference between never having finished a novel and having finished one is so much vaster than having finished one and having finished like 5.
Yeah.
Like as soon as you know you can do it again, and you can do it again, and you can do it again. But like I finished my first book in NaNoWriMo, 2010, I think, and it was 56,000 words of, oh my God, like I've literally never reread it. I started once and was like, oh no, put it away again. I rewrote that whole story at one point, but I didn't even look at that version. Terrible, but it didn't matter because as soon as I typed the end, I knew I could do that. And then you never have that doubt. Doesn't get you again. There'll be plenty more along the way, but you never again think, can I even do this? So
Whereas it took me until I was 25 to finish a novel, and then that novel was the first one that sold. So I was one of those ones that was just like rewriting stuff or writing the first third and then being like, all right, I don't want to write that anymore. And like, new shiny idea over here, hooray. And, and it was actually Amie who made me finish Skylark.
I'm terrifying.
Yeah, she's really convincing when she
you
wants
guys
to be. And that's sort of what started all of this.
Yep. Well, I mean, your hand went up. I mean, I'm calling on you.
You go first. Oh, well, going off that, because you guys sound like hilarious right now.
We're pretty tired, so we might be a little punchy.
How were you guys in high school?
Oh, I was very, very shy. I still consider myself to be an extremely shy person, and nobody believes me because, after you're published, you do so many public speaking events that it feels much more natural. But Amie can attest that I'm occasionally still like a pile of quivering, terrified goo, like just up until like 5 seconds before I walk into the bookstore.
But then you walk in and you see like readers, and you're like, oh, that's
these are my people. They're just like me.
Yeah. It's probably not a huge surprise. I was like a massive extrovert.
She's a huge extrovert.
And I still am.
She likes everybody and everybody likes her, and she's totally confident about everything, so.
The world's a fabulous
Opposites
place.
attract.
Yeah. I think I've always been very extroverted. I've always been very loud, but
You're in a like place. You're in Miami.
Yeah.
Everyone's loud, even in their cars.
This is my thing. No, I own that, but I think that you could be at risk of being a terrible person with those qualities if you're not also a listener. And I think like it probably says something that my job was as a mediator. So it was sitting down with people every day and not talking, but listening. And it always weirded people out that I had like such a talker, and then I had this job that was actually like, tell me your stuff. But I think that's why, Meg's my kind of creative partner and is quiet. Jay, my other creative partner, is quiet. My husband is quiet, but I find they have a lot to say.
Yeah. Our silences speak volumes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, building a little on what I said, I was a massive geek still in high school. I watched anime, I wrote fan fiction, I was a gamer. Like everything, every stereotype. I think the only thing I didn't do was like collect the little models. But like I did tabletop gaming, I did computer gaming, all of it. I was a huge geek and still am. But now I can be like, yeah, but I'm a writer, so it's like research and I'm cool now.
Yeah.
I played Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
So
I played Magic too in middle school.
elves were the best.
Yeah, I got my husband has been emailing me
Forest.
photos of what's happening in Australia in my absence. And the latest one was my husband came home late from work and our dog was enraged by this. And he shows his rage by carrying our possessions out through the dog door and piling them in the middle of the garden in what we like to call the summoning ritual, which is like, because we come home and we go straight to the stuff and go, Jack, what did you do? And he's like, see, you came.
It worked.
So he tried to drag my husband's giant bag of magic cards out through the dog door. So my husband comes home and there is just this trail
Of magic. And some magic cards are quite valuable.
Yeah, it turns out.
So that's actually a really bad thing.
He wasn't wrapped.
No.
You got Acroma Angel of Vengeance from the Legion series.
I probably stopped playing before that happened.
But that was like it's still like one of the most valuable things.
I don't know. I was always about green, about the forest.
Green and whites for me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like another language.
I like the walls.
No,
I was always that one who would like build my defenses very quietly while all the rest of the players
I swarmed. I had that
attacked
elf
each
swarm
other.
deck. I had the elf swarm deck from the Legion. Legion was my favorite set, and it was basically just like because they cost a little mana to use. You just laid them out constantly, and it was great.
I always liked to sort of build up my defenses and just be very quiet, and nobody would notice that I was like amassing this giant army because I wasn't attacking anyone, and they'd all be.
Actually, her strategy in life.
Yeah, no, this is true. This is like the reason I'm saying this is not because I expect all of you are interested in magic. It's because it reveals a lot about me.
Yeah.
And everybody would be busy like doing all this, like they would be attacking each other, and like and then eventually once I was ready, I would just like come out from behind my walls, and everyone would die. So. Just, beware.
This is why it's worth listening to the quiet ones.
I know someone had a question back here.
Well, I heard through your blog tour that you guys threw in sort of an Easter egg from the second book into the first book.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys do that to sort of connect it further, or as a reward for your readers? Or?
We have tons of those. There's
Yeah.
actually not just one.
Yeah.
We love that.
We're rereaders, so there are a lot of things in here for rereaders, for people who read the second and third book and then go back.
Or just read the same book, because I'm that way. When I find a book I really like, especially when I was a teen, I would just like read it 8 times. You know.
But I would say there's a story that gets told in the first book that is told again in the second book in a different situation, and
you realize that character in the second book or in the first book was talking about one of the main characters in the second book the entire time, and you realize that like that little seed was and that little hint was in there.
Yeah.
And so we actually have hints in the first 2 books as to the identities of the characters in the third book.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah. I like you guys. You're a very emotive audience.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, and so are we. So like.
Yeah.
But,
And so, careful readers and rereaders might be able to figure out who the final 2, the final Cylons, will be.
Yeah.
And
some people have guessed correctly. Some people have guessed
we've seen some
incorrectly.
guesses.
We're not
online.
confirming or denying.
No. Yeah. It won't be a huge secret. I mean, once we're finished with the book, it'll be announced and everything. But.
Yeah, but it's safe to say that all 6 main characters are connected in a lot of very complicated ways, some of which they know about, some of which they don't know about. But
all of which, only some of which is revealed by the second book, but all of it sort of comes out by the third book, and you realize that, so part of the reason that we chose the series title Starbound is that we wanted, bound for the stars, we're going out into space like the Icarus on this journey, but the sort of double meaning of it is we wanted it to be starbound like fate. And that's really what happens with these characters is it turns out that they have these connections that they didn't even know about, and it kind of all comes out and it's all tied together in the third book.
yes, if we're clever enough to pull it off.
Yeah. we set this up and now we have to do it and we're like, oh.
Yeah.
I've got a question. So it's not uncommon to that film and movie rights and TV rights get sold for young adult series because that's a huge market for them to just pull from. Has anything been in the works for you guys?
Yeah, so there's a lot more that we're not allowed to say than we are allowed to say. We can say it's been optioned for TV. We can say it's in development. We can say we really, really love the team
people,
who are working on it.
Do any of you guys watch the show Haven?
On Sci-Fi Channel?
So, Duke?
Yes.
Eric Balfour, it's his production company. So he basically called us up one day and he's like, hi, and we watched that show. So we were like,
It's the guy from
he lives in my TV. So, and the last time we were on tour, we got to hang out with him in LA, and we were very starstruck.
It was
he's
cool,
so nice. In person, you can continue to love him.
Yeah.
And tall. So I'm 6 feet tall, so I really appreciate height in a guy, and I'm just like, hello.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was our coolest moment ever.
He's engaged,
when we,
though.
Yeah.
What can you do?
Yeah, we met him for dinner and we both just kind of stared at him for a moment like, you're Duke from television.
Yeah.
And happily that happened on the inside, unless he's watching this, in which case, hi Eric.
Hi, Eric.
Now you know.
I will tweet the link.
Yeah.
But he and the other producers on his team are just so smart. Every phone call we've had with them, they understand the story so well, and we were worried, that they were just gonna want to take the name of it, and make their own story and sort of abandon the heart of it. But Eric is
really get
possibly
it.
even more devoted to keeping the heart of the story than we are.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, we would love to see a TV show. Yeah, let's do it. And he's like, no, we have to make sure it's like
only if it's right.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think we knew he was like that these were the people for us when he was telling us very early on that he had been reading These Broken Stars in his trailer on set at Haven, and there's like, you know, the thing that happens in These Broken Stars.
if you guys have read the first book, that
if
thing.
you've read it, you know about like the big bad thing that happens, and if you haven't, don't worry, it's coming for you.
You'll know.
He had just reached that bit, which we know is a highly emotional bit because we get a lot of all caps emails from people who have just reached that bit, who have feelings that they'd like us to know about them. And the problem is you just want to email back and go, yeah, but
just keep reading.
I wanted you to cry. Don't ask me to be sorry. This was my intention. But anyway, he had just reached this bit and he got called to go on set and he didn't go. He kept reading and they came to get him and he apparently
and he was
went
like, shut up, I'm reading.
Not now! Having a moment! And we were like, yep.
We're like, yeah, this is the right guy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, in development means it could happen in 6 months or it could happen in 5 years. I mean, it's really hard to say, but it's in really good hands and we're really happy with where it is. And we know that if it does get made, it'll be made right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question? Yep, in the corner.
Oh, that's so hard because, like,
Yeah.
there's so many different ways that you can bring a character to life. I will say, the audiobooks, I don't know if any of you guys are audiobook fans, but the audiobooks for these, our audiobook producer just did an amazing blew us
job.
away.
Yeah.
Different actors for the different points of view, and she hired really brilliant, she hired actual actors rather than audiobook narrators.
Yeah.
And they're all amazing, but particularly the guy who read for Tarver in this book, we met him when we were on tour last year, and he is tall and dark-haired and handsome and gorgeous and wonderful and nice, and we were like,
we were sitting with a couple of other authors before an appearance, and this dude walks up, none of us
and
know
he's
who he is.
beautiful.
And all four women at the table
Are
are
like-
like and then he comes up to us and we're all like,
And he's like, are you Amie and Meagan? And we're like,
if you want.
well, yeah.
I mean,
And then he said some more stuff, which I don't really remember what he said because there was like a buzzing in my ears. Yeah. But suddenly we recognized his voice and we're like, oh my God, you're Tarver. And he was like, yeah, hi.
Yeah.
So he would be great.
And then he was like, this is my wife.
yeah, that was the kicker. That was
Every
the kicker.
time.
And we actually just when we were out in LA, we were at Barnes and Noble, and we met the narrators for The Shattered World, and they are phenomenal.
Also amazing. Yeah.
But in particular, Donabella Mortel, who reads Jubilee, we actually got to help with casting her. Our producer sent us like 4 or 5 different clips of actresses reading the first chapter, and asked us, she said, I already know who I like, but I want to hear from you guys, you know, impartially. Yeah. And so Amie went away and listened, and I went away and listened, and we like wrote down our choices. Yeah. And it turned out all 3 of us picked Donabella, and it's because she is Jubilee.
Yeah.
Like,
it's hard to describe except to say that when you're writing something, you hear the intonation in your head. You know, like when an actor does a line, there are 10 different ways they could deliver it. We have in our heads exactly how the inflection sounds or the sarcasm or whatever. And when Donabella read it, we were like, oh.
Yeah, it was just amazing. Yeah. It was like one of the coolest moments so far of being a writer, because it was literally hearing my character, and I was blown away.
Chills,
I was like crying. I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. And she's beautiful, and the only problem with her being Jubilee is that she's like 5 feet tall, and Jubilee's like 5'10". Yeah. But we would just find a really short guy to play Flynn, and it'd be fine.
Yeah. Or just
special effects, Photoshop,
platforms.
TV can do it.
Yeah, giant steps to act on. I don't know.
Lilac is like a combination of like a bunch of different, like Molly Quinn from Castle, Amy Adams. I mean, she, you know, that would only work obviously if they weren't teenagers, but it's what's her name from Teen Wolf? Lydia Holland Roden.
Yes.
Yeah. She's like, I never really got into Teen Wolf, but I watched like 2 seasons of it because I was in love with her. I was like, she is amazing. And yeah, she gets fan cast a lot as Lilac.
Yeah. Happily, we won't be asked at all who should be cast, because like we have no idea what we're talking about. But.
No.
Well, the whole heels bit. Have you guys seen how they make Robert Downey Jr. look like he's 6'3"? because Chris Evans
the
and Chris
platforms
Hemsworth,
in the-
you saw those
yeah.
platforms. They're like disco
Yeah.
shoes from
They used to
you
do
know,
that with
in the 70s.
Humphrey Bogart because he was really short and he had to be a romantic lead, and especially at that time, but even still now, like the guy always had to be taller than the girl.
Yeah. John
Which I hate.
Wayne used
And-
to act against sets that were 9/10 of actual size to make him look bigger. Because he was a little
The more
guy.
you know.
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. Big personality, little
Trivia
man.
night with Amie and Meg.
Any more questions?
These have been good
Yep.
questions.
When you wrote like Jubilee and Flynn, they're like, it's like switched gender roles. How did you decide to make like Jubilee female and Flynn?
Yeah. So for those who haven't read the book yet, without spoiling anyone on anything, Jubilee is this totally badass, kick-ass soldier who is not good at talking about her feelings and will put you through a wall if you annoy her. And Flynn is a rebel who doesn't believe in violence and like just wants to talk it out and thinks we could all get along if we just try a little bit harder. So it's a switch on the traditional soldier being like the male gung-ho whatever, and the female being can't we all get along?
Yeah, but the thing is, science fiction and gender have always had a really interesting relationship. I mean, science fiction has not been a genre that is historically welcoming or kind to women. A lot of female science fiction authors in the past have had to have male pseudonyms because men wouldn't read science fiction by a woman. And in fact, today there are still lots of men who won't read science fiction by a woman.
Yeah.
We have gotten comments like, this is really good for girls sci-fi. We've had I didn't realize this was written by girls.
Yeah. Well, you clearly can't read.
I
so
just-
they put it on the
but,
cover. A lot of that, and if you think about like traditional covers and artwork, it's like babes in bikinis and green alien girls.
Total objectifying and almost dehumanizing these.
Princess of
Yeah.
Mars is one. Always the scantily clad,
Yeah.
Princess Leia
Princess
slave.
Leia, slave girl.
Yeah.
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 It's,
So you're probably picking up that we've got quite strong views on gender in science fiction.
yeah,
in general.
yeah, and so in the first book we had very sort of iconic figures of the gender they were. I mean, Tarver was this nice sort of country boy soldier guy, very sort of salt of the earth, corn-fed. Lilac, beautiful, dresses, very feminine. And so we wanted to, in our second book, move away from that and do something different to show that, at least in our universe, our far future universe, there is no really gender divide in terms of the roles you can play in society and with each other and in a romance and all of it.
Yeah, and one thing that was really interesting is when the copy for this book, like the little blurb, very first went up, it said, for some reason, it gave Flynn's gender, but it didn't give Jubilee's, and it didn't give
It
their
was
names.
like
Yeah.
the rebel on
rebel-
Avon and the soldier
sent
sent to
to
stop
stop
him
him.
or something.
And all these people were like, you guys, you wrote gay romance, that's awesome. And we were like, make no mistake.
Comment after comment of
Yeah.
people who just assumed that because, it was easier to believe that we'd written that our second book was going to be a same-gender romance than it was to believe that this soldier was a woman.
Yeah, and make no mistake, gay romance is awesome.
Yeah.
But it wasn't what we'd written, and it was really interesting to us that people all made that assumption. So we actually went a lot further than that in the book, and when we were revising, we took every secondary character, and gender flipped them to check what it was, how it
As an
was that we were
experiment. It
treating
wasn't
them.
necessarily permanent. We would try it out. We would gender flip them.
Because the thing is, even though we've got these views, we know that we've been taught still to think in a certain way because we all are.
We all carry
Yeah.
the sort of baggage of the society we were raised in.
So there was one character who would switch from male to female, and then I was reading to it, and I thought, oh, that's kind of an aggressive response. And then I thought to myself, hang on a minute, well, you didn't think it was an aggressive response when it was a dude. And so, uncovering that stuff in yourself and still kind of, it's a permanent project working
Or
on it.
things a female character would say, and then when you switched it to a male, you realized that there was a stronger way to do it, or all of
Yeah.
these things that when you gender flip it, it will highlight the flaw in the character or the assumption that you've made.
Sorry, did you want to?
Kind of to piggyback off that, I'm not done with the Shattered World, but when Jubilee is talking to her commanding officer, and when people talk to her, they refer to them as sir.
Yeah.
So why did you make that choice? I don't know if that's how it happens in real life, or if they would call them ma'am.
Well, do you want to?
No.
Okay. Well, we just our universe.
We discussed this. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is,
And we discussed it with our editor too, because originally edits came back and they had changed all the sirs to ma'ams, and we're like, "Did you really think that we'd accidentally not written ma'am 20,000 times in this book?" But so this kind of goes along with our concept that this universe is sort of like post-gender in a way. I mean, there are still men and women.
It's too loud.
What?
I'm not going to do that.
But in terms of the roles they play, gender is no longer important. And so the term sir now doesn't have a gender attached to it in this world. It's simply a
respectful title
yeah.
that you would use. Because, I mean, if you look at These Broken Stars, Tarver thinks a lot of unkind things about Lilac, but he never thinks any of them because she's female. He thinks of them because
she's spoiled and she's wearing a dress and she's, you know.
because of her class. He's classist, but he's not sexist. You know, and some of that stuff is a good example of, you know, opinions expressed by the characters are not necessarily those of the authors.
Absolutely.
You know, he makes a lot of judgments based on her class that we wouldn't agree with, and like the reader.
And she does about him.
Yeah.
She assumes he's stupid and uneducated and blah, blah, blah.
So.
But mostly, we thought about creating a third, creating a word like, you know, like Battlestar Galactica created frack so that they could curse on television. We thought about creating a third word that would be like gender neutral, and it would be like sir, but it didn't work. It didn't sound military. It didn't sound natural. And so we just figured that, you know, it would just become sort of a generic, sort of honorific.
Hearing you guys talk about the gender roles reminds me of Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. If you guys watch it,
yes. Have we watched it?
We watch
Who are you talking to?
We watch it, we ship it, we dissect it.
I actually cried at the ending.
Oh my God.
Because Wasabi forever.
But yeah, 'cause, you know, it was like the end of an era kind of thing. But that's I associate, you know, your conversation, this discussion with that, because when you think of Aang was a very, I mean, just and all the culture also. Aang was the boy, and he was, you know, very calm and peaceful.
Weak,
let's talk this out. And Korra was like, yo, you know.
Yeah, punch you in the face. Yeah,
absolutely.
So.
They do such amazing things with gender, and that, like, Toph is like, she's my girl. I love her.
Because it sounds like tough was like the best line in that episode.
Yeah, so I mean, we think about this stuff heaps and heaps, right down to little examples like when we were doing copy edits. There was a line that's something like the
computer tech. One of the techs must have put the data on an external drive so that they could continue to work on it, and our editor changed it to he because they is plural and it was a singular tech, but. We didn't want the assumption to be that
this
guy. Tech person was a guy, because that's like you know 21st century thinking. That's not like 31st century thinking.
Yeah, so we picked poor grammar over gender assumptions.
And we had like 3 different copy editors change it, and we changed it back every single time, and we explained why. And then the next one would come back, and it would be changed again. So what can you do?
We have time for one more question. Yes.
Yeah.
And after I had picked it up, I actually turned it around. I had already decided it was.
Yeah.
But I do like sci-fi, so it was perfect that it was. Did you guys have any input?
No. Full credit for our cover goes to the
Whitney
amazing
Major.
design team at Hyperion, and Whitney Major is our cover designer. She's unbelievable. She's
Brilliant.
super talented. She conceived of it. She made it happen.
She sent us what they call a comp, which is like a first draft, and it had the blue starry background, and it had like basically clip art people like in a green dress and a dude floating, and she was like, this is basically what it'll look like, and then we'll do a photo shoot. And we were like, sure, looks good. Yep. And then when we saw the final version, we were like, oh my God.
Yeah. And we've just seen the very first kind of comps and mood board for book 3, and I think it's probably going to be the best one. Like it's just, and I know you wouldn't have thought we could level up, but it's really like she's so talented, and I think even when we were all like, are you sure? Like, how's that going to work? She knew exactly what she was doing.
The only input we had on the cover of this one was to give Tarver dog tags, because they're mentioned a lot in the story. You know, it's part of his costume, and you know,
they're a little bit hot also, we think.
So that was literally, that was the
we
only
said that
thing.
in the email. Yeah.
That was the only thing.
It was, yeah. I mean, I think, you know, as well, a cover is for people who haven't read the book yet, to get them to do exactly what you did. Yeah. And so, like, the authors aren't necessarily the best people to decide what will cause someone to go, oh, and reach for it. So, yeah.
Okay. So for those of you watching at home, you can call the number at the bottom of the screen, and you can order a book signed, personalized if you'd like, and we'll ship it out to you. free shipping on event nights like this. And I want to thank Amie and Meagan again for coming out here and pushing to come out here, because that's a really big deal for us. And I want to thank the audience for making it out tonight. So thank you very much. And
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming, guys.
And we have books on sale at the front register. We have These Broken Stars in hardcover and paperback. We have The Shattered World, only in hardcover. And we have Megan's full trilogy, all in hardcover, because hardcovers are nicer. So thanks again for coming. And, another round of applause, please.
Much clapping.
Thank you.